good?
Yep.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Overland Weekly, episode number 22. I'm your host. My name is Davey, and if you are watching this, you are like, that does not look like Davey's office. I've come down here to the one and only Big Tire Garage today. If you grew up anything in the last 20 plus years watching off-road fabrication TV, Power Block, Power Nation, all that good stuff, extreme 4x4, extreme off-road, four-wheeler, Big Tire Garage, build for off-road,
Yep.
multiple-time UA participant,
Yep.
Onyx Build Challenge.
Yep.
Am I missing any?
No. Monster Garage.
Monster Garage.
That's a long time ago.
That was a one shot.
A little bit of everything. Yeah, it's getting to the point now where I just tell people that I just play trucks for a living. So that's what I do because it's getting too complicated to explain all the TV shows we make. So yeah, but no, it's good.
This is Ian Johnson, folks. Ian, thank you for inviting me to come down and
no
have
problem.
this conversation.
Glad you're able to come down to the shop. I always like doing these things in person better than in over the Zoom type of thing. It's more fun.
Yeah, it's more real.
Yep.
So, Ian, you were, let me see if I've got this story straight. 25 years ago-ish,
Yep.
You're teaching high school shop class.
I am. Yep.
In Canada.
In Ontario, Canada, yep.
So at that point in time, before any TV auditions, any of that kind of stuff, what did you think the next 25 years was going to look like? Did you have your career plotted out? Was it educational?
I thought it was going to be because it already changed careers once, right? So I was a shop teacher. Before that, I was a licensed automotive mechanic. So
Okay.
I went to become a tradesperson first and did not plan to be a teacher at all. Hated school. So I wanted out as soon as I could. And in Canada, you basically sign your apprenticeship papers when you're 16 years old, which is what I did, and started working in grade 11 in a shop, and then went to school in the afternoons, and basically finished high school basically doing a split schedule where I would work for half the day and go to school for half the day. And then I thought I was going to be a mechanic for the rest of my life. I didn't know I was going to become a teacher. And in Canada, winters are really long and summers are really short. And my parents were teachers, and I started doing a lot of whitewater kayaking and a lot of camping, and the summers were just too short. It was too much time to go back to work. I hated going back to work on Monday after weekends of being in the woods. And so I was like, well, I said, I need a job where I don't have to work in the summer. And the problem is when you're a mechanic, that's your busy time this summer because people are traveling and cars are out on the road. And in the winter, it's just slow. So I had lots of time off in the winter, and we would travel internationally, we'd go kayaking in Cuba, we'd go all these different places. But I wanted the summers off. And so I asked my parents, I'm like, hey, can I become a teacher? And they said, yeah, you could be a shop teacher. You don't have to go to university or everything. You just have to go get your teaching degree. That takes you 1 year to do it, and you can be a shop teacher. And I was like, I'm in. So
your motivation was 100% to have your summers off.
Yeah, my motivation was 100% summers off. Yeah, well, that and teaching in Canada is different than teaching in the States. Teaching in Canada is a highly paid, very sought-after profession. So if you get in, you're in. So once I was in, I honestly didn't think I'd leave because you retire at 55 with a full pension. It's a hard job to get, but it's a super good job to get. It's a challenging job, and you're teaching. It's not an easy job. But yeah, I thought I was going to be teaching high school for the next 30 years. I would basically retire at 55, 60, and then go live my life. That's a very Canadian thing, right? You work, retire, and then live.
Then you live.
Yeah, and so, but then I went and did episode of Monster Garage, had tons of fun. Then went and got the audition to do Extreme 4x4 and create that show with Spike TV. And I honestly thought I was going to take 2 years and do that. We'll do that for 2 years, then go home. That's what we thought. Because no TV show lasts forever, right? And that was 2004. So that was 21 years ago now. So we've been here ever since. So the 2 years isn't up yet. So one year I may have to go back and get a real job. We'll see.
You might have to go back to that teaching career.
No, I said I'm going to go work at like Home Depot. I'm going to be the guy at Home Depot.
Oh, I can see that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a perfect
totally
retirement job.
Yeah,
it'd be tons of fun. But no, one day I'll have to have a real job. But yeah.
So let's talk about that Monster Garage episode. How did that come about? I'm thinking this is early 2000s. Was it like a classified ad that they're looking for
commercial on the show?
Somebody to come on? Okay.
Commercial on the show. Yeah, same way I found the gig with Power Block. It was just they just ran a commercial during the show. Said if you want to be on the show, apply. And I applied on the internet. Same thing, just went on web forum and found the application, filled it out, sent it in, and then made the short list. And the next thing you know, that happened fast. Like I applied, and that was when like I didn't know how TV worked because I was teaching high school, obviously. And now that I know how TV works, I know that was perfectly normal. Like it either takes forever for something to happen in TV or it happens in like 5 days.
Okay.
And that literally happened in 5 days. It was, I filled out the application, had on a phone call interview, and then they basically said, can you be in Long Beach on Monday? And I said, I don't know. I'll have to ask my principal if I can take the time off. And luckily my principal was like, yep, you can take the week off and go ahead. And so I took the week off, and next thing you know, I'm in Long Beach, California, making Monster Garage.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it was tons of fun. It was good. And then that opened the door, right? Because when I applied to be on Power Block, same thing, online application, but I was able to say, the question was, have you ever been on TV before? And I was like, absolutely.
Check that box.
Yeah, I was on Monster Garage. Here's where you can see the episode. And had to do the same thing, send in an application video. And so when I sent it in, because I'd been on TV, obviously I just got shortlisted right away. And so then it was like, there was 20 of us that were flown into Nashville to screen test. We screen tested, and of those 20, I flew back to Canada, and I said to my wife, I said, this is like a real job. This isn't like Monster Garage. This isn't like in and out. I got to move to Nashville. They're going to have to get me a work permit. I'm going to have to get a job. Like, this is not as simple as fly in, do the thing, and fly home. And so the next thing you know, I got a phone call a week later, and they said, yeah, you're the one. Can you be in? We got to start the process. Here's a lawyer to call this lawyer, fill out this piece of paper, and we're going to start the process of getting you. And it was all contingent on me getting my work permit. If I get the work permit, the job was mine. But once I had the lawyer and the job in the States, then it was just okay. It was just a matter of checking boxes for a work permit type of thing.
How did your folks feel about that? The two tenured teachers.
Oh, I tell this story. My dad hates when I tell this story, but it's so funny. So when I was becoming a mechanic as a teenager, my dad didn't understand it, right? Because they were white collar, not blue collar people.
Okay.
They lived in a world where the joke was that teaching was the family profession, because it wasn't just my parents. It was my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. Everyone in the family was a teacher.
A whole house of educators.
Yes. Yeah. So everyone in our family was teaching. And so when I was going to become a mechanic, my dad was always like, I can't believe you're going to throw your life away and work on cars all day. You should go to university. He kept trying to talk me into being an engineer and all this kind of stuff. But once I started working as a mechanic, he then realized, you know what, it was the right job for him. He's happy. He's doing well. And eventually he came around. But then when I told him I was going to become a teacher, I thought, this is it. I'm coming home. My mom was like, she helped me apply. She helped me fill out the application with the right words and stuff, because that's kind of part of the game, right? So when I went home to tell them, hey, I got a job as a teacher, I thought my dad would be like, yes. And he was like, why would you want to join this thankless? Because they were at the end of their career. And I get it. Like, once you've taught for 30 years, you're burned out. You're done. Yep. Like, you do not want to, you're at that point. And I think that's every career. And you just don't want anyone to go into that job because you're just tired of it. And so when I told them I was going to be, so then when I got this job, leaving teaching to get this gig, that was, they're risk averse, my parents. So the idea of like packing up your family, moving to another country, taking a job in television that's got absolutely no guarantees, you don't know what's going to happen. That for them, it was just like, they just didn't get it. They were like, oh, my wife, and my wife's family was the same way. They were like, you're throwing your life away. And both my wife and I were like, yeah, it's going to be an adventure. We're going to see what happens. That's all it is. The worst case scenario, we can go back and be teachers. So that was our thought process. So yeah, so they were not exactly fond of it, because my son was 3 years old. So that was not their first grandkid, but one of their grandkids. And so I'm taking their grandkid away. I'm taking my in-law's daughter away. We're taking everybody away to another country. Right?
Was your wife teaching as well?
Yeah, she was a teacher.
Everybody's teaching.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. It's a family profession, right? So yeah, I met my wife at the school, my very first job that I got teaching. Okay. That's where I met my wife. She was the art teacher. I was the shop teacher. So yeah.
Classic pairing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's how it worked out. Yeah.
So, all right. So you said your folks were white collar. So I'm going to assume then that your dad wasn't the one that taught you how to turn wrenches.
No, my dad was handy. My dad
Okay.
was a guy who, he built every house we lived in. So he was
Okay.
a very
Yeah.
handy, but he was more of a construction kind of handy
Yep.
guy. And he was always if it came time to replace the furnace, he was doing it. He wasn't going to hire somebody. If it came time to, build a shed behind the house, he built the shed. He didn't hire somebody to do it. So I grew up in a world where you did stuff with your hands, but nobody was a car guy. Nobody. I had no one in my family, no aunts, no uncles, no brothers. Nobody was into cars. And I have no idea why I have this sickness that I have. But I do remember vividly being 14 years old, walking through a drugstore up in Canada in the mall on a Saturday, and walking down the magazine aisle and finding a VW Trends magazine.
Okay.
Seeing that magazine and picking it up, and that was it. From then, it was just all downhill. I was going to buy a Volkswagen. I was going to customize my Volkswagen, and that was just. And then once I got the Volkswagen and started customizing it, then it was just that was the first time in my life that I'd ever done something that just felt normal. Like, I was good at school, but I didn't like it, but I could pass. And I was the worst kid for teacher parents, because I was literally the C's get degrees kid. I was like, I don't care what my grades are. Did I pass the course? If I passed the course, that's all I cared about, because I was just looking to get out of school. And so my poor parents had to live with, I'm sure, because being a teacher now, or about the time then, I knew what it was like now I know what it's like in the staff room. So they probably had to walk in the staff room and listen to all these teachers be like, your son handed in this did this test and got 50%. And he's fine with it. And for them, that was probably just so hard on them. And I feel bad, but that was just my life, right? So I don't know where it came from. But then I started working on the Volkswagen, and it just felt normal. I was good at it. I enjoyed it. And it was the first. So then it was just like everything turned to cars. Nothing else mattered. It didn't matter. Nothing else that I ever did involved anything but what would get me closer to working on cars. That's all I cared about.
And so you were doing the heavy truck, the diesel mechanic route. Did you do some vocational training school for that before?
So the way it works,
or was it all you learned on the job?
Yeah, the way it works in Canada is an apprenticeship program, so it's similar
Okay.
to Europe. So in Canada, you can work on your own car, you can work on your friend's car, and it's the same. There's over 400 registered trades in Canada, so that's everything from electrician, plumber, cable installer. There's even HVAC trades, welders, pipe fitters, masons, and then all your automotive stuff, auto body, auto mechanic, heavy truck and coach. So when you're 16 years old, you kind of make that decision. So when you're end of grade 10, you sit down and you say, okay, I'm going to go to college or university. I'm going to go into business. I'm going to be a doctor, lawyer, architect, blah, blah, blah. Or I'm going to go into the trade. So if you go into a trade, what trade are you going to go into? And normally it's kids whose parents are also tradespeople. They just know they're going to go into that trade.
Yeah.
So then you start down the road of finding a shop that'll be your basically your placement, and then you sign your apprenticeship papers. And when I did it, to be a mechanic, you signed and you had to do 9,000 hours on the job. And once you completed 9,000 hours, you sit down and you write every ASE test in one sitting. And if you get 70% or above, then you're a mechanic. And then you get your mechanic's license. And then once you're a mechanic, then you're allowed to work on a vehicle for profit.
Okay.
So that means I could open a shop. If I was an apprentice, I could work under a mechanic, but I could not open my own shop or work on a car for money or any of that. But once you're a licensed now it's called licensed automotive technician. They had to church it up, But back then it was automotive mechanic. And because of the when I started my career, the dealership I worked at they had a car dealership on one side of town, and the other side of town they had a heavy truck, like Volvo, a semi-truck shop. And because I signed my papers with that shop, I bounced back and forth between the two.
I see.
So I got my heavy truck and coach and my automotive mechanics license at the same time. So I was basically learning two licenses at the same time. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was working on cars. Thursday, Friday, I was working on buses, dump trucks, and semi-trucks, which I hate big truck stuff. It's terrible. It's cool, but everything's hard. Everything's hard. Like
Everything's heavy.
Yeah, there's a fixture for the jack to take the starter out. Like
Right.
it's when you go from heavy trucks to cars, it just seems so much easier to work on a car because you just grab the starter and throw it on your bench, right? So
Yeah.
but it was so that's how that transition happened.
So you come down here, you're doing Extreme 4x4. You go through, let's say you go through season 1, and then it gets renewed for another season, and then another season. Was there a point that you were like, holy crap, this thing's going to keep going?
Yeah, we actually had to make a decision at the end of year 3. So, like I said before, teaching was a pretty sweet job. So
Yeah.
I took a sabbatical. I didn't have to quit my
Okay.
job. So I literally just had to leave my job for 2 years, and I had a 2-year sabbatical, so I was always guaranteed my job back. At the end of year 3, they said, "Hey, you're not coming back, are you?" And I'm like, "Maybe not. Why?" And they said, "Well, you've kind of gotta. You've made the decision. You got to tell us because we need to hire somebody full time to replace you." So at the end of year 3, my wife and I sat down and we're like, "I don't think we're leaving anytime soon." So we gave up our jobs at that point. So year 3, we were like, "Yeah, we're going to stick around for a little bit."
And at that point, you're working for, I believe, the production company, I presume.
Hold on, I'm just going to check something here.
Yeah.
I heard a truck backing up. I got to make sure we're not getting.
Delivery.
Nope, it's not us. Okay.
All right. So were those studios in Nashville? You're commuting
Franklin.
up? Oh, they
So
were in
well, when I
Franklin.
first
Okay.
came, they were actually up in Gallatin.
So those were the old TNN studios?
Yes. Well, it was. We never. I never actually worked for the network. I worked for RTM Productions, which
Okay.
was a company that subcontracted television shows for TNN, that then turned into Spike, that then turned into Paramount.
Yep.
So the production company RTM Productions, they used to shoot. The studios were always up in Gallatin and then Riverside, so north of Nashville. So season 1 of Extreme was shot up in Gallatin, and then they bought a building in Franklin and then
Okay.
moved everything to Franklin. So season 2 and on of Extreme 4x4 were shot in Franklin, and then that was where we just stayed for, I guess it was like 14 years is when we stayed there for that long. So so we were technically down in Franklin at that point.
So you and I talked earlier. You had Extreme 4x4 that became Extreme Off-Road,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody that's watching from the outside is like, is this the same thing but different?
Yeah, I
You
made
know?
the same show now under 4 different names.
Right.
So, yeah, what happens is networks have different reasons for doing things. So the Extreme 4x4, the reason it changed names was because at the time, actually the show got canceled. But the way the contract was written was the production company could pitch other shows to other networks if the names were different. They weren't allowed to use the same shows. So they wrote up a pitch for other networks that were just new names of the same shows.
Right.
And we were supposed to be canceled off of Spike TV. That was supposed to be a thing. But what happened was Spike canceled us. And then, we talked about this earlier too. It's called show business. There's 2 sides to the coin, right? So what happened was Spike canceled Extreme 4x4 and Hot Rod. At the time, I think that was called Hot Rod TV. No, it was called, it was Muscle Car, Extreme 4x4, Trucks, and Horsepower.
Horsepower.
Yeah. So they canceled all of them. And then the new year starts, and their advertisers, their automotive advertisers, their Castrol's and Geico's and their big money guys, they said, "Where'd all your automotive TV go?" And they said, "Oh, we canceled it. We don't want that anymore. We're not going to do those automotive shows anymore." And they said, "Well, that's where we want to advertise. So if you don't have automotive shows, we're not going to advertise on Spike TV." So then Spike called up and said, "Hey, so can we have our shows back? Well, we changed our mind. You're not canceled." And the production company at the time said, "Well, no, we've already changed the signs, changed the names, changed everything." And they said, "Well, how about we just take those new shows?" So they renegotiated contract. We lost some airings because at the time we had Extreme 4x4's heyday, we were literally all that Spike played on the weekend. There were times that it played like for 8-hour blocks of time just to fill time, right? So we lost our Saturday airing, and then I think we just got a Sunday airing. So at that point, we're down to 1 day a week instead of 2 days a week. So they had to renegotiate the contract a little bit, but yeah, we ended up back on Spike again for that. So that name change literally meant nothing to anybody, kind of thing. So it was kind of funny.
So now today, you have a name that I don't think a lot of people know, Digital Lug.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my company.
That is the N. Johnson company.
Yep.
And everything comes underneath that. So when did you decide, after Extreme 4x4, or at what point did you decide I want to be more than just the host and the wrench turner on this?
So the guy that owned the company, his name is Joe St. Lawrence. I've said his name many times. Very, very smart individual, very good mentor in this space. Very smart man. So Joe, he was retiring.
Okay.
And so he sold the company, sold RTM Productions when it was still big. Still had airings on Paramount, still had airings on NBC Sports and CBS Sports, so it had a good footprint. But he sort of saw the writing on the wall that, like, this is going to go away. At the same time, we sort of watched it happen, right? We saw social media come in at like 06, 07, YouTube 06, 07. Joe and I worked really, really close together, and Joe was one of those guys who would share anything. He wasn't a boss who like kept cards close to his chest. He was like, you could walk into his office and just say, "Hey Joe, how are you making money in this business?" And he would tell you. He was a great guy. So we saw social media and YouTube doing its thing. We saw our numbers kind of slipping a little bit, like reach wise, from the beginning, from like 04. So around 12, 13, we were sort of seeing this sort of like change in viewership habits. And I would sit down with Joe and we would talk, and we turned down the money from YouTube. So YouTube, that's what, if you've listened to the podcast with Dave Freiberger, he talks about how YouTube funded Roadkill in the early years. Well, they originally came to RTM. And myself and Joe and another producer, Tom Spachowski, we sat in a conference room and looked at these contracts. And Tom and myself were like, we got to do it. We got to take this money. We have to do these shows. And Joe, I love him, but he was a micromanager. And so he had to have his hands in everything. And he was like, I can't run 4 more shows. And we were like, you don't have to run them. Just do them. Tom was like, I'll run them. And so we turned that deal down. We're like, no, we don't want it. But at the time, I was sitting there and I was like, wait a minute, this is the kind of money that Spike was paying. Mm-hmm. So if this is an internet company that's going to pay the same kind of money that a network's paying, that tells me that something's more afoot than just like a channel where people watch people get kicked in the balls. Something's gonna, which is kind of what YouTube was,
right?
Which is why they were paying for content. They were trying to elevate themselves, right? So, seeing that happen, and then talking to magazine guys who had lost their jobs, and they had said, we all sat in meetings and said we see this TV getting bigger, and we know it's coming. We're just ignoring it. And I said, well, wait a minute. If this is the same thing, if we see that this is happening on the social side and the streaming side and the digital side, and we're not paying attention to it, then we need to change things. And so I said, well, I then talked to my wife and I said, we got to do something that's like digital based, maybe have one foot in TV, but also take advantage of this streaming, all the digital stuff at the time. There's got to be a hole there. There's got to be money to get there somehow. And then Joe retired, sold the company. And I knew right away that as soon as he sold the company and he left, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give myself 2 more years here. But I'm going to pack my parachute. I'm going to figure out a way to get out. So we just said, all right, that's what we'll do. And so I just sort of said, we'll just plan it. And I ended up lasting 18 months. I also knew that Joe and I worked well together because Joe was a very hands-off boss with me. When we started Extreme, he was really hands-on like he was with other shows. But he fully admitted that he didn't understand the off-road space.
Okay.
And so when at episode 3 of Extreme, they shut down our production. They came in and they were like, you're doing it all wrong. That's not how we do it. We don't use junkyard parts. We don't do this. We don't do that.
They don't know their audience.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And so I sat down with, at the time, Tom Spachowski was my producer. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, because they wanted us to make the show more like, at the time it was Hot Rod TV. And they're like, it's got to be like this. And they showed it. And they were like, in one episode, they installed a shifter and a carpet kit. And in the same episode, we started with a frame and junkyard axles and had a rolling chassis of a Jeep at the end of the episode. And they're like, you're doing too much in an episode. We don't show cutting and grinding and welding and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, that's what I do. That's what we do. That's what off-roaders do. And so my producer at the time, Tom, he said, well, here's my plan. He goes, we'll probably get fired. He said, but I'm just going to delay delivery of the shows so long that they can't change them.
Okay.
He said, I'll just delay the drop-offs. So there were times when literally we were delivering shows to our editors. The editors had like 3 days to cut the show based on my producer's script. So he would put it all together, deliver it to them. They would take the tapes. They would cut the show together. They would cut that show together. They would drop it on Joe's desk, executive producer, because he wanted to watch a show. But then literally somebody got on a plane with the tape, flew to New York, took a cab to Master Control at Spike, and literally handed it to them.
Oh, wow.
And they were sliding it in the deck because it was going to air in 10 minutes. So Joe couldn't make a change if he wanted to. That was the deal, right? And Tom's like, we could get fired for this. He goes, but I like the show. And I was like, I love the show. It's an awesome show. And so when that happened, episode 1, 2, and 3 launched. It was not received well. People did not like the show. They thought it was just trucks on steroids. It was not good. And then episode 4 released, and we're cutting a Jeep in half, and there's sparks flying, all this kind of stuff. And that show, like, through the roof, like 5 million viewers. It was just, we had forums for the show. Forum blows up, subscriptions blow up for the forum. And so Joe was very like, okay, I don't know what you guys do, but just keep doing it.
But I like it. Yeah.
And so he just literally let us alone. So I knew when he retired and sold the company that the new executive producers were not going to be that way. And they weren't. They were very much why are you building this? We want a justification statement and of this and of that. And I'm like, dude, I'm just building what's cool. And they're like, no, we need to see more. You need to get us data. And I was just like, I'm not going to last. This is not going to. So I knew I wasn't going to last. My plan was 2 years. And in 18 months, I was just asked to exit the building. And I said, okay, that's fine by me. So my office, I knew it was coming. My office was cleaned out, and they were like, we'll send someone down to clean your office. I'm like, it's empty. Don't worry about it. It's all gone already. Back of my truck was already full 3 weeks ago. I was just waiting for you guys to smarten up and let me go. So, yeah. So then I said, well, are we going to leave? And we said, we'll spend 6 months on this idea, which we did. We worked with Kevin Tates, who at the time had already left. We produced a show for him that we did a lot of heavy social, a lot of, and it ended up on Amazon Prime. And we basically boiled that show together, had some sponsors in it, and knew we had a good package, but we were a little early to the market for the people in our industry. Our industry is a little behind. I'll be the first one to admit it. We still have magazines. Like, a lot of companies don't. There's still a lot of magazines out there, but especially 7 years ago, if you went to a company,
there was still a few.
Yeah, if you went to a company and said, yeah, you need to take all your money that you're spending on television and magazines and just put it into social media and content creation, they would think you're crazy. Now, if you do that, they're like, yes, absolutely, we need to do that. So we started doing that, and then in the meantime, that's how I started the Digital Lug production company. We made all those shows, did all that social media stuff, and then started picking up a lot of clients for content creation. Bought this property, built this building. The idea of this building was it was just going to be just for social media content creation. It's going to be like a fun house. We called it it was going to be like Rob Dyrdek's Fantasy Factory.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
But just for cars. That's all it was going to be. And then Discovery Channel called and said, hey, your old show's getting canceled. There's a hole in the market. We need an off-road show. And everyone we talk to says you're the only guy to do it. So will you do it? And I was like, no, not going to do it. I've left TV. I'm not doing that. You're going to make me sign some egregious contract that doesn't let me do stuff on the social media. And they said, fair enough. Nice talking to you. We'll leave. And then 2 months later, they called back and said, okay, so now nobody else can do the job. We've talked to every other production company. We have a production company we want you to partner with because they already make some. That's Brenton Productions out of Florida because they already make some stuff. But they said every advertiser we talked to said they only want to do the show if you're on it. because I've been doing it for 15 years.
Right.
We grew like Spider Tracks Off-Road. We were the first people to put them on television, and all they made was wheel spacers, and we watched their company explode. Fleece Performance was working out of a pole barn behind his dad's house. We were the first people to put Fleece Performance diesel engines on television, and back then that changed companies. That
Sure.
we blew them up in the industry, and because of that, my reputation was very good because I always did what I said and said what I did. I never said, hey, I'll put you on TV, and then didn't. We always were very fair with the companies that we worked with, and always represented their products as best we could. And so then Discovery came back and said, all right, well, we know that for the business side of this show to work, which is the other side of the coin, we need to have you on the show. And I said, okay, fine. So let's come to an agreement. And they said, what about, they said, we shoot it in your studios. You have the vehicles. You have the know-how. We're hands off. Just deliver us 10 episodes. Tell us what you want to build. We're going to slide our advertisers in there when we can. And how does that sound to you? And I said, how many episodes? And they said, well, how many do you want to make? Because I'm paid per episode.
Okay.
So they said, as many as you want to make. How many do you want to make? I said, what's the lowest number? And they said 10. I said, I'll do 10. Because that way I still have time to do other stuff. And because at RTM, I was making 23 episodes a year. You'd spend a week making an episode. So that's your year. You spent all year just making television. There was no time off to go to Moab or go to King of the Hammers or go on trips or have fun. And I said, I want a life. I want to be able to go take these vehicles out and do stuff with them that isn't all of my free time. And so I said, I'll do 10 episodes. And they were like, perfect. That's but we'll just do it. We'll do you a fall schedule. And we started that. And that was 7 years ago now. So we're into technically it's season 2 of Build for Off-Road, but it's season 7 of working for Discovery.
I see. What's Ian, what's a big misconception that folks have about this automotive TV in general and the production of it?
I would say probably the biggest misconception is that automotive television is dead, which it's not. I think people misunderstand the word television.
Okay.
So is cable television that you pay a monthly service for and you get 300 channels delivered to your house, is that dead? I don't think it's dead. There's still lots of people who do that, but it's not the number one way that people consume content, right? So I think people confuse TV because that's what they think of when they think of TV. I think of TV as any type of entertainment that you consume on that large thing in your living room called a television.
Fair.
Now, we've kind of bled those lines a lot because so many people are watching it on their phone. But I also would say that when I'm watching Discovery Plus on my phone, I'm technically, in my mind, I'm watching television.
TV, yeah.
I'm watching a video that was curated for your entertainment on television. I would classify YouTube as television. I still do. And people don't like when I do that. I say it bleeds the lines between social media and TV, but it's becoming more like traditional television than any other form of media. Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, that's still more social media, where YouTube is slowly bleeding into more of a traditional television style entertainment. So the way it used to be was you had, if we go way back in time, you had 3 big networks, ABC,
Sure.
NBC, CBS,
Yeah.
big networks, right? Well, and that's where you watched all your television. And that was
for you young bucks, that was it. And
Yeah.
you go to your grandparents' house and they'd tell you, go change the channel, and
And
you
yet,
go grab the clicker.
I firmly believed for a while that was the only reason my parents had kids was to change the channel.
Sure.
Because that
Yeah.
was my job, right? So, yeah, and that was, if you think of a funnel, that's the big top of the funnel, right? So you got NBC, CBS, and ABC. And so they're the top of the, and that's where everyone's watching television. So then cable comes out. So then cable, the funnel can get smaller because now you have all these little cable channels like HGTV and Spike TV and all these different channels. And those channels are your niche audiences, right? So if you're watching HGTV, you like to work on your house or you're interested in home decorating type stuff. So that's a smaller audience, but it's a more focused audience. Well, now you can look at it and say the big funnel's pretty much gone. I mean, those companies aren't around. Now they've been replaced by Discovery, Netflix. That's who the top of the funnel is because they're looking for large scale productions that get everybody talking, right? Everybody watching. Then you have your smaller niche ones that are your same thing, HGTV, but they've now moved over onto streaming. But at the same time, YouTube is the same. So YouTube is this big funnel. At the top of it are your big content creators like your Mr. Beasts and your this and that, who they're just trying to get Whistling Diesel, same thing. They don't necessarily care if you're an automotive fan. They just want 10 million people watching a video.
Sure.
But when you scale down into your smaller niche groups, like myself, Big Tire Garage, Flex Rocks and Rollovers, Ambition Strikes, we're after a niche audience. We're after, you like living off grid? Well, you should watch Ambition Strikes or Life Uncontained. So I call them small networks. That's all they are. They're just a small network. They're like what Spike TV used to be. So the difference is that instead of turning on your television and going to your streaming service and choosing what television show you're going to watch, you're doing the same thing. You're just going to YouTube and watching it differently. The number of people watching content hasn't changed. They're just in different places. So there's not fewer eyeballs out there. So your job as a production company now is for me to say, how can I put together a package of content that will get me the same number of eyeballs that I used to get just making a television show? Because in its heyday, I could put an episode of Extreme 4x4 out, 5 million people would watch it. Now, when we put an episode of Build for Off-Road out, if on traditional network television, if on the cable, if we pull 500,000 viewers, it's like a grand slam. Like the network is calling you. This is amazing. 500,000 people watch the show. It's amazing. But our job is to find the other 4.5 million. So we do that through social, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You just got to get that. You got to churn that audience back out. So that's your job as a production company now.
So has the storytelling changed then? Because I think in the old days you had a 30-minute show, which probably means, 20 minutes of actual.
22:30 is what we're capped at. Yep.
Yeah, and now you've got a blank slate.
Yes and no. So now what you're doing, and if you talk to anyone who takes YouTube seriously, you look at what's the sweet spot. And the beauty of now is you as a YouTuber or a content creator. I don't like the name YouTuber. I think it's silly. It's like me calling myself a television because people watched me on television, right? So a content creator or someone who creates content, your job is to find the sweet spot for your audience, which is one nice thing about YouTube is you can play around with that a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's similar to what we did in television where we would say, okay, well let's figure out what project people like. Let's run some promos on this. Let's find some audience. So we would run a promo and a show that we think people will watch our show. So we would take some time and run a promo over there, and then pull that audience over to our show. That was what you did in the television world. Now what you're doing in the YouTube space or the content space is you're like, okay, so now you're collaborating with another YouTube channel with the hopes that their YouTube channel will slide over onto your YouTube channel. You are playing with the time of your video. Like, what do people on my channel like to watch? Like, will they watch an hour-long video? Will they watch a 48-minute video? Will they watch that's so yeah. But now, has the storytelling changed? I think we had a pendulum swing. I think what happened was when everyone said, TV's dead, and YouTube, I think we saw a lot of the vlog channels take off because people were like, it's different, right? I just want to watch something different. It's really fun just to watch this guy just living his life, just doing things, this girl just living her life, just being who they are, just random stuff. But I think we're seeing at this point now, we're seeing a burnout on that because I think what we're seeing now is the content that's doing really well on YouTube is content that's more like a traditional television show.
Traditional production.
There's a start, there's a story, it's planned. If you look at Chris Fix's stuff, if you actually follow him on social and see us, he's very good at planning his videos. He knows I need a start, I need a middle, I need an end. He's planned it all out, which is what we do with a television show. Same thing. You start open, middle, end, and it's the same with all channels. Now they're more focused on, okay, I need a good story to make this video watchable, and so I think that's where our pendulum's swinging. I think now we're back into more of a traditional television mindset, even though it's for YouTube.
Okay. So what about taking the customer, not the customer, let's call it the viewer, from these short form, the TikToks and the Instagrams? Are you able to capture that viewer and move them to YouTube or move them to the streaming platform?
Yeah, the nice thing now is it's easier to do. So now you have spots like when YouTube came out with YouTube Shorts. So now you can create a YouTube short that's interesting that has a direct link over to the longer YouTube video. So the problem is in the space is when you're dealing with like the Instagrams and the Facebooks of the world, they don't want you to take people off that platform. So if you promote your YouTube video on Instagram, it's never going to get the same amount of reach if you just put a cool post on Instagram. So you got to find ways to like talk about your YouTube content on social media without saying YouTube. So that's
it's a game.
Yeah, that's literally what you're doing. So you're kind of playing that game back and forth of getting it all figured out. But yeah, you can transition that viewer over, but it's also a different viewer. I more focus on the idea that, okay, let's make content specifically for that vertical 1 to 3 minute space, and then let's make content for somebody who's going to sit down and watch it on their television.
Okay.
So it's, in my mind, it's not just ripping content. Like I'll rip content out of a video if it's interesting. Like if we're doing something, it's like, oh, let's take this little clip out of there that's like how to fix this wire. We can turn that into a piece of short
2
content.
minute,
Yeah. Whereas I'm not trying to take everything we did in that 30-minute video and jam it into a 1 minute video. That's just impossible.
Ian, let's talk a little bit about the builds themselves.
Yep.
All right, so let's back up here for a minute. When you watch or rewatch, I don't know if you do. Do you go rewatch?
I watch everything. So that's
Okay.
that's the biggest thing and I laugh at people who don't. You'll talk to people who are like in our space, like making it, and they'll be like, "Oh, I don't watch any automotive television. Or I don't watch any YouTube. I watch everyone's stuff. I have a TV in the shop that plays instead of a radio. I watch everything. If it's automotive based or like home building based, if it's a YouTube channel or a television show, I've watched them all. I watch every single one of them. And by the time my stuff hits air, I will have watched it 9 times because we watch it through edit, we watch it through voiceover, we watch it through color correction. So I don't necessarily watch it once it hits TV because I've seen it so many times. But yeah, no, I'm a believer that, especially if you want, like, if you're just doing this for fun, you don't have to do that. But if this is your business, if you're a professional football player, you run routes. That's what you do. Your job is, because a professional football player is not paid to play. He's paid to win. So you do your job, you do your homework, and that's your job. If your job in this industry is to make content in the automotive space, as far as I'm concerned, it's your job to research everyone's content and find out what's happening out there.
What about your old stuff, though? Do you ever find yourself watching any of those old early seasons?
We've gone back because we were going to do like a reaction
That's
series.
what I wanted to know. Is there like a cringe moment, something specifically that when you look back, you're like, oh God, I can't believe I did it.
Oh yeah. No, there's lots. Yeah. When we go back and look back in seasons 1, 2, and 3, because there's 2 things in place, right? Seasons 1, 2, and 3 of Extreme Off-Road, or Extreme 4x4, I should say, like we were the tip of the spear, right? We were the first people doing that on television. And there also, the industry was so young. You know, we were still making square drive shafts. We were still, we were still doing spring overs and still bending steering links to get around spring packs, and just trying weird things. Whereas there were some people out in the industry which were well past that. Especially if you go out like in the West Coast, if you go out and look through, your trophy truck builders and all those guys, to them that was just super hack fab, right? Which it was, but in the rock crawling off road space, that's what we did.
Right.
And so when they would watch the show, to them, it's just like, oh, I can't believe you would do that. Can't believe you'd show that on television. But for us, we're just showing like, this is what we do in our garage. Right. But yeah, so when I go back and watch some of that, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe we did that on that truck. We can't believe we just bent that steering link and then showed it on TV, or didn't even build that correctly and just showed it on television. But at the time, that's what we did. Right. So yeah, so there's lots of those. I can go back through probably half of the first 3 seasons. We could go through and just pick apart every single episode.
Is there one vehicle specific that you'd like a redo?
There's a couple that I didn't get to finish.
Okay.
That I wish I could have finished. There was one. It was a little crawler that we used a Honda motor with a transaxle, and that was going to feed two Toyota differentials.
Okay.
It was super small, little single seat. It didn't survive because when we changed the show name, Extreme 4x4 to Extreme Off-Road, we had to get all new projects. So that it just kind of went away. I would like to do another one of those. I didn't get to finish my 6x6 Suburban that I was building, and that's just because it was still in production when I got let go. So I tried to buy it. Because they sold everything, right?
Sure.
And I was trying to buy it through like a third party, like a friend of mine. I'm like, hey, go and buy that thing because they don't know what they have.
Right.
Because it had like $30,000 worth of axles underneath it, right? And but to them it was just scrap because they didn't even see it. So they were selling it on Facebook, I think, for like $5 or $10,000 or something. And I was like, buy that, get that back for me. But they figured out it was me that was buying it, and so they kind of killed the sale and then just cut it up and scrapped it instead. So
that's painful.
Yeah, so it's kind of that. I would like another go at that 6x6 Suburban. That was because when I was doing that 6x6 Suburban, the idea of a 6x6, there was only like one or two out there. Not like now where there's like every time you turn around there's a 6x6 Jeep, right?
Right.
There was like one other vehicle. It was a Dodge Ram. And the guy that had built that Ram, I was getting some parts from him to build this Suburban.
Yeah, that truck was in every magazine. And
it was everywhere, yeah. But I wasn't the first one to do a 6x6, but I was probably like maybe the third one. But the problem is now if I do it, I'm just a guy that's building another 6x6. So it's kind of a bummer. But I do wish that I had finished that one for sure.
Is there a platform that you haven't got to do that's been on your wish list?
I would love to build like... but it can't be done. I would love to build like a super, like full blown, like trophy truck style or Ultra 4, like a Triton Engineering, like show people, because I love Ultra 4.
Okay.
I was there at the beginning. I followed it for years. I was there before it was called Ultra 4. It was just called King of the Hammers. I've raced King of the Hammers. I absolutely love the sport. I love everything about it. I love the progression of those cars. I would love to do one of those cars and give it the justice that it deserves of showing all the technology that goes into one of these super high end, like Triton Engineering $500,000 Ultra 4 car with portals in the front and IFS and like anything that Joe Thompson would build, who runs UFO Fab. His vehicles are absolutely works of art, but that is not television friendly because it
Is it too niche?
It so much doesn't happen visually for large periods of time. It's like you will never find a really good video on YouTube that is exciting and interesting to watch about wiring a car. Because it's really, really boring. It's like, okay, now run the wire to the left headlight, and it's the same when you're building those super high end vehicles. There's so much goes into like just building the front A-arm. That would be like a 2-hour video.
Sure.
But people would find it so boring. Your audience numbers would be so low that the benefit for you as the person making it, unless you really, really wanted that vehicle, it's just not going to pay off in the end. So that would be the one that I would love to do, but I just don't think it's possible.
Is there any that you've either on the show or off that you get halfway through it and you're like, this was a bad idea?
There was one. We were doing one that was like all rolled tube. It was called the Curvy Buggy years ago back on Extreme Off-Road. And it was just, we decided to put a diesel engine in the back of it, and it just got off the rails fast. We were trying to throw too much stuff at one buggy. We should have just like focused on, let's just make a buggy, put just a regular old LS in it and call it a day. But it's the thing about when you're making TV shows or content, you're always trying to like do something different. Like my entire car collection that I have, I've got like something like 20 some odd cars. I don't base them on, I always wanted a Jeep or I always wanted this. I try to make them like, I've got one with an LS. I've got one with a Cummins 2.8. I've got one with a Hemi. I've got one, like I try to mix up the package a little bit to make it interesting to have. And I think that when you're making TV, you have to do the same thing. You have to be like, okay, how can because I always joke, I say off-road vehicles, it's just Mexican food. No matter what you order in a Mexican restaurant, it's some type of seasoned meat inside a tortilla. That's all it is. And all an off-road car is what 90% of our off-road cars are an LS-based engine, a General Motors transmission, an Atlas transfer case, and a set of Ford axles.
Right, and it's not just off-road. My brother and I were talking about this. I mean, the whole, during the Power Block and Power Nation, as the LS became what it is, it was just, LS after LS.
Oh,
after LS.
we teased them when we were renaming the shows. We actually went and had T-shirts made because we teased them that their show should actually be called LS What? Because all they did was put LS's and things.
That would actually have been a good name.
Well, yeah I know.
Yeah.
We actually bought the URL and had T-shirts made and everything with LS with a big question mark on the front. It's like, this would be the perfect. That's all you guys do is LS's, and that's the problem, right? And so I think they've tried to break from that now. Pat's kind of like he tries to break out of that,
yeah.
But it's hard. I mean, you're building engines, right? And you cannot discount the fact that the LS, it's an amazing engine. It's probably one of the best engines that GM ever made, right? So it's hard to justify that. So when it comes to off-road vehicles, it's the same. The LS is there because it works, and it works great. So so when you're taking that package and trying to mix it up a little bit, it gets hard. So I always try to figure out a way to do something just a little bit different on every single vehicle that we build, and then it kind of fits a different niche.
I come from the Toyota world. You've got a couple of Toyotas here, one with an LS in it, and one with definitely not an LS in it. So talk about the FJ45 and the kind of the story of how that came about and getting the body for that. And then I want to talk about that 2UZ swap as well.
Yeah. So the FJ45, so when it comes to building the shows for Discovery, it's Discovery, HBO, now it's like HBO, whoever it is, right. Warner Brothers. I just sit down at the beginning of the year and I just send them whatever I'm going to build. I say, here's the 10 episodes, here's what I'm going to build, and here's how they break out. And the FJ45 was not on the list at all. I had a couple other projects that were going to slide in, and then Aqualoo Industries out of Canada announced that they were closing. They said, we're closing the doors. They've since changed that. They found a buyer, so they're still open. But at the time, they were like, we're shutting down. They said, so if you want a body, now's the time to get one. And they were offering super deep discounts on anything they had in stock. And one of their FJ45s was always on my list of I want to build an FJ45. I think they're cool trucks. And Aqualoo does some really cool stuff to the FJ45 to make it even cooler. So I called them up and I talked to the person that I know there. I talked to my contact and I said, are you guys really closing? Is this a thing? And they said, yeah, no, there's a chance we're not going to be around in a year. So, and I said, well, I need an FJ45 and I need it and they said, well, we got one in stock. It's only missing a fender. We can make the fender next week and we can get it out the door in 3 weeks. And I was like, done. I need it. I'll buy it. And so I bought it and then got the body down here. And then I just was going to stick it in the corner and just figure out something to do it later. And then I was like, why don't we just put it on the show? And then I was like, well, how am I going to make this one different? Because I'm not just because I have a Jeep with an Aqualoo body and I did the Defender and I built so many vehicles with the Aqualoo body on it. And I had just finished the Tacoma. And I had just finished a frame swap on it. So I knew the frame inside and out. And I was like, man, it would be pretty cool if I took a Tacoma frame, front half of the frame, did just IFS front, and then did trailing arm and a 9-inch in the back like an Ultra 4 car. And then I thought, man, it'd be even cooler if I put portals on it, put 74 weld portals. So I called Quinn at 74 Weld and I said, got this crazy idea. And he was like, I don't know why. He built his portals with this plan in mind. He goes, I don't know why more people aren't doing portals in the front, big 1-ton axle in the rear of their Tacoma. He goes, it's a great package. You don't necessarily need the portals out back, but people like just to have them. And he said, because he built them with that in mind. So he had the gear ratios all figured out. And so, yeah, it's got 74 weld portals up front, 6.2 LS, a 6L90, Toyota front frame, and the back's all custom 2x3 3/16, and it's got trailing arms and a Spider Trax Pro Series in the back. So it's 529 gear ratio in the back, 430 in the front with a 122 portal, and it matches perfect. And it's going to be nasty. It's going to be a fun truck.
What's the timeline on that truck?
I probably will work at finishing it this current year.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd like to have it. I want to make that one a little bit nicer. I got a lot of sort of rat roddy trucks.
Yeah.
And I want to. That one is. I didn't. When they put the 6-inch stretch in that cab at Aqualoo, it makes the inside of that cab really roomy, really big. So I think I have the space to put air conditioning in it and a couple nice seats and make it like it can make it like a true. The problem is it's still Toyota at heart, so it's still a Toyota front diff, so it's not indestructible. It's not like a true Ultra 4 car, but it's pretty good. And so I think with the package that's there, you could probably treat it pretty aggressively. So it could be a good rock crawler type Ultra 4 style car, but I still want the inside to be like super comfy. I'm going to probably put a full interior in it, make it really nice.
But you don't build anything that you won't beat on, right?
No, that's the beauty of that. No, everything has to go off road. Yeah. Even my 53 Willys wagon, when I finished it, and that was crazy when I built that truck. So I finished that truck, and then I don't know why I decided to do this, but I was like, when I talked to my painter, I said, I got this crazy idea. I want to do matte pearl white on the body, and then high gloss root beer metal flake on the roof. And he's like, yeah, that'll be beautiful. It'll be awesome. I saw it on Joe Martin from Martin Brothers Customs had done a 55 Chevy like that. And I thought it was a cool color combination. So we painted it, and then I was taking it to Moab, and I said to him, I'm like, so what happens if I scratch it? And he goes, if you scratch this truck, we have to repaint the whole truck. And I was like, wait, what? Can't we just like buff it? He goes, no, it's a matte clear. He goes, if you scratch it, we bring the truck in, we sand the whole truck down, and we repaint it bumper to bumper. And I was like, oh, this was a terrible idea to paint this with a matte clear, but it looks so cool. But he said, so are you just not going to take it to Moab? And I'm like, no, it has to go off-road at least once. It has to hit because I mean, I didn't build it to wheel here. It's got a diesel and a manual. Right. It doesn't have the wheel speed for crazy southern stuff, but I knew that it would work really good out west because everything works good out west. So we took it to Moab and we ran it up. We did all the hard trails in Moab. It did its job. It climbed up all the rocks. It did all the ledges. It did everything hard. And then it came home and I was like, that's it. It doesn't have to do any more four-wheeling ever again for the rest of its life.
It's proved itself.
Yeah. So no, that's every off-road. There's no point building an off-road vehicle and not taking it. Now, do you have to take it to the hardest trails? No, but you should build the vehicle and at least use it for what it's built for. I grew up building pro street cars and I hated it because back in Canada we built these pro street cars, and that was before Street Outlaws and all these shows. So people built amazing pro street cars and never raced them because they were scared they were going to crash them. So we would I worked at a shop that built amazing pro street vehicles with high-end paint jobs and beautiful and gorgeous cars, but they never saw a racetrack. They just saw car shows. And I hated doing that because it's like you're putting all these race car parts on and then you're not racing it. It just seems so silly because we built one for our shop, a little shop truck, an Astro van, and we built a pro street Astro van. And I said, the shop owner, I was like, we're going to do ladder bars or four link? He goes, we're just going to put leaf springs on it. And I was like, why would we put leaf springs on he goes, it's not going to go. No one's going to look underneath it. It sits an inch off the ground. It's just for delivering parts and looking cool. We're just going to move the leaf springs in. And I was like, that's actually the smartest decision someone could make. It's just because we're not taking it to the racetrack, so it doesn't matter that it has leaf springs. It just needs big fat tires and it has to look cool. So why would you go through all the work of doing the four link and the ladder bars and torque tubes and all this stuff if you're actually not going to race the car? So so in my mind, every four-wheel drive vehicle has to go off-road at some point.
I like that. I like that a lot. I want to jump back to that Tacoma. So I've talked on the show before about 2UZ swaps. Our friends in Huntsville at Rocket City Cruisers are big proponents of that. You've got one out there that's even more unique. I thought my buddy Zach with one in his 60, and there's one in an 80 series down there. That's pretty cool. But a standard cab taco with a 5-speed behind it, I don't think there's another one out there.
No, when we were doing it, we're pretty sure we're the only one. So that started simply because I bought that Tacoma. We were making a show, and we knew we needed a Toyota. And so we were playing the show out. I was like, I got to fit a Toyota in here. And I started looking through the forums for looking through Facebook Marketplace for a good deal on Toyota. And this 05 Tacoma pops up, and it's so cheap. So cheap. Standard cab. I already had a little bit of a lift on it and some tires and wheels. I'm like, why is that so cheap? Went and looked at it, and at a 4-cylinder with a dead hole. He said one of these cylinders only has 30 pounds of. He sold it. The guy brought it back. Was like, this motor shot. I'm not buying this truck. So he did a compression test on it, and he's like, motor's done. And so I'm like,
now, when you were looking at this, did you know that the Tacoma frames were a thing?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No. So he's like, there's a little bit of rust on the frame, and I'm like, man, I'm not worried about that. So I bought it with the 4-cylinder, and we did the mid-travel trail gear kit. I was trying to like replicate that classic 4Runner look with the back, and I fell in love with the truck. Absolutely loved it, and it was fun to drive, and it was cool, and it was fun to take on these little adventures that we go on. And then the motor let go, head gasket finally just done, and I started looking at new, like just a long block, and the long block, that 4-cylinder I guess was only used for like a couple of years. And so that little 2.7 4-cylinder, I couldn't find one. And if I did find one, I'd find it used, and it was $5,000. And I paid like $3,500 for the truck. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to spend $5,000 on a motor for a $3,500. So then I started looking at doing the V6 swap. And I was like, I'll just buy a complete drivetrain of the V6, same generation truck. There's got to be a way to make this work. I started researching it on the internet.
Because if it was a Jeep, it'd just be boom, boom.
Yes,
right?
yeah. Because I mean, and so I'd look it up on the internet, and I did all these. You'd end up down the rabbit hole of all these Toyota forums, and the Toyota guy is very different than the Jeep guy. The Jeep guy has no problem putting any engine in his Jeep that ever could possibly be an engine that might run in a Jeep, and he'd swear it's the best choice. There's guys who put 4 BTs in their Jeep, which is a terrible engine in a Jeep, but they swear by it.
There's also guys that put Jeep motors in Toyotas. One of those has happened in this shop, and it hurts some feelings.
Yeah, that was the whole point of that one, too. Yeah. We could talk about that, too. So I started looking at doing the V6 swap, and it just didn't seem that there was any information on it at all. So I'm on Ultimate Adventure talking to Fred Williams, and he's a big Toyota guy. And I said, I got this Tacoma. I'm looking to the V6 swap. I can't find any information on it. I said, honestly, I'm thinking about possibly doing a V8 swap. I'd seen a couple posts about people doing the 2Z swap out of the Tundra. And he said, man, if you could do a V8 and keep the manual transmission, he said, you'll break the internet. He said, because he said he's never seen it done before. So I was like, man, if that's the case, then I got to do it. If it's never been done before, we have to do it. So found a Tundra. Luckily, I started looking for cheap, anything with a 4.7. I was on Copart every day. Luckily, the internet is now smart enough. They monitor everything you look at. And I jump onto Facebook Marketplace, and there was a Tundra for sale for $1,000, 200,000 miles, truck been rolled.
Yep.
And I was like, that's exactly what I need. So I went and bought that truck, running, driving, drove it home. Put it on the trailer, drove it around.
So you guys that are in this part of the country that came up on your Facebook and then disappeared, this is the guy that got it.
Yeah, I got it. So I bought that truck, and then I'd already researched that you could put the 4.7 in front of the 5-speed manual. Found a company out of Florida, because I guess the drift guys love that motor because it spins up so fast, makes good power, it's reliable. And they were putting it in Supras. And the Tacoma 5-speed is very similar to the Supra 5-speed. Now, I've also been told, I can't confirm this, that the Toyota 5-speed is also the same as the AX15 in the Jeep, which I don't know about. I can't confirm or deny that. But someone told me that it's almost the exact same. So I ended up buying this adapter kit and the bell housing and everything to make it work, and we got it in there, and that truck it's so much fun. It's that truck. And the irony was, when we were building it, everything just fit, right? Fuel lines lined up. Everything just seemed to fit right. And when I said that on the show. I said, man, it looks like this engine should have been in this truck.
Made for it, yeah.
And we got an email from a guy who said he was retired, Toyota engineer, was working at Toyota when that 05 generation Tacoma came out. And he said that the reason that 4-cylinder was only in that truck for 2 years is because that truck was actually supposed to be released with the V6 and the 2UZ only. And then the marketing department told them to kill it because they thought it would hurt sales of Tundras.
Tundra sales.
And so they killed the V8. And that's why the 4Runner has the V8, and it's all the sheet metal is the same.
Sure.
So I eventually converted it, because when I first did it, I had like the original 4-cylinder radiator, made my own radiator hosers and stuff. And then when someone said, why not just use the 4Runner? It's the same front sheet metal. So I just went out and bought a 4Runner radiator, 400 radiator, and that stuff just drops in, bolts right up, and you're done. So yeah, I believe he was right because of the fact. And if I could do it again, I probably would try to find a 4Runner but I couldn't find one. Even on Copart, they were going for $4,000 or $5,000 for a V8 4Runner.
Yeah, you got to find somebody that doesn't know what they have.
Yeah. And it's hard. That's harder to do now.
Right.
Luckily, this Tundra was bad. Like it looked like a beer can, but it was $1,000, so I bought it. So it worked out.
Speaking of low budget, so you've always kind of been an advocate for get out there and have fun with what you've got. We're all aware of kind of the current Facebook marketplace values and what you can go for. If you've got $5,000 and you're looking to make a buy this weekend, what are you looking for on marketplace?
Man, that's hard because that's the tricky part, right? Is I always say to everyone, budgets are different for every person, right? Like my version of a low budget is different than someone else's version of a low budget. All budget buys you is the fact that you're probably not going to break on the trail. So the more money you have, the less chance you're going to break, and the less time you're going to spend working on the vehicle. So if I had a $5,000 budget, I don't care what I'm buying, because I'm going to go and I'm going to get a set of 1-ton axles, some used coilovers, some used links. I'm going to scour Facebook Marketplace for just the parts, and then I'm just going to find anything that's got a V8, like a Toyota, a ton, anything, a Tahoe.
You really don't care.
I don't care. As long as it's got an LS under the hood and a transmission and a transfer case, and then I'm just going to build everything from that. But I know that I also have the ability to I have $100,000 worth of equipment to offset that $5,000 budget.
Right.
If I was looking for a $5,000 budget for a garage build, I'm still going to go down the road of, well, I honestly right now would be looking for a cheap JK. Because now there was literally one up the road. I missed it by a day. They had a 07 two-door black running driving JK, not a Rubicon, but still a JK. It was $4,000. So nowadays that's the new XJ is the.
Oh, you think so?
Oh, 100%, and it's better than an XJ because the XJs are actually worth some money.
Now they are.
Yeah, because anyone who's buying an XJ now wants an XJ. People who were buying XJs before couldn't afford a YJ.
That's it. You're right.
And so they had to buy an XJ. Or they told their parents they wanted a Jeep when they turned 16, and their parents brought them home an XJ, and they just got sucked into that unibody life for some reason and couldn't get out of it. So the reality is that, but now that the JKs are getting so cheap, that's the new low buck vehicle. Because at the end of the day, that JK, if you can find one for $5,000-ish, you've got a full frame, 4-link front and rear. Yeah, the motor's not great, but eventually you could swap it. But it's okay for now. If you want lower gears, there's tons of junkyard options. I mean, it's the new easiest, cheapest vehicle to customize out there, because everything older Toyota is worth money. You're not going to find an old single cab Toyota that you can solid axle swap. That's not going to happen. The Tacomas are still holding their value like nobody's business. So
unless you're Marvin and can fly out to Arizona and buy a $1,500.
Well, that was a friend of a friend deal too.
Okay. There's the rest of the story. Yeah.
That was somebody who was like, they knew what he was doing making this video, and they're like, hey, we've got
They were
this
supportive.
Because when he showed up here with that, I said, I'll give you $2,000 for that right now.
Sure. After he's driven it across the country.
I was like, I'll give you $2,000 for that 4Runner right now. I love those 4Runners. Those are my favorite trucks. Yeah. So I was like, man, that's you guys they stole that truck. Stole it for sure. But yeah, that's just the reality of it. I mean, there's still so many different, but that's, if you're looking for a low budget, a potential rock car right now, 2-door JK for sure. Or 4-door. I mean, there's 4-doors out there. Or you can even hunt more and find the 2-wheel drive JK, which they did make. Ooh. And then all you have to do is put a transfer case and a front axle in it, and then you got a 4-wheel drive JK. Because those you can get even cheaper because they were made for the Postal Service. And in California. There's a lot in California because they got better fuel economy.
Of course.
Yeah.
I see.
And that's the same as the old XJ. The same thing you can do with the old XJs. They sold them in 2-wheel drive, and you could buy a front axle and a transfer case and make it 4-wheel drive. So it literally is the new XJ.
Do you own anything that's stock?
I mean, my tow rig's kind of stock for now, but it's getting cut up in a week. So yeah. I mean, I don't modify my tow rigs. I'm not a fan of that. So I've had multiple diesels of every manufacturer. Right now, I'm still rocking my Nissan Titan because it will not give up. It's just in for the long haul at this point. I don't believe that you should delete them. I don't think that's worth the risk anymore. And so I never have any of my trucks. I never delete any of them just because I was always worried about traveling. Because I travel a lot. I drive across the country probably 4 or 5 times a year. And I never wanted to be in the spot where nobody would work on my truck.
Oh, because of
Yeah.
compliance policies. And,
Yeah, and now it's just different, right?
Yeah.
And now it's even more strict than it used to be. So yeah, so that would probably be the only vehicle I have that's stock at all. Yeah, that's it. And that's getting chopped up and turned into an earth roamer. And in I think next month we're going to cut it in half. So yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good one. That's gonna be exciting.
It's already made it did its first job. It made the internet incredibly mad, and that was someone's already sent me a message that they were like, "Don't cut up that Titan. I got this F550 I bought off Copart. I can't use it. You can fix it. It needs this, and this, and it's a good deal." He offered to me for $22,000. He goes, "I'll give it to you for $22,000. It needs a bunch of work, front end work, but the frame's straight. But it's a 22 F550." With the extra long wheelbase. He goes, "This is exactly what you need to build." And I was like, "I would love it, but I've already made the internet mad with the Titan. I have to continue down this road. It's gonna be perfect."
In folks that are a little bit younger or maybe new to the off-road scene, may not have seen some of these early shows, the Extremes and four-wheeler and whatnot, but they know you from the Onyx Build Challenge. Mm-hmm. Explain to us how that came about, because you said earlier things in TV can move really fast or really slow. Mm-hmm. But this one kind of just happened, huh?
Yeah, so Onyx, I knew of Onyx. Obviously, I was a user of Onyx, and I knew what they were doing with all their influencers. And I had talked to some of their influencers previous to them calling me about this plan to do some sort of build-off.
Right.
And apparently what happened was the person at Onyx, who I ended up working with, one of the higher-ups, every time she talked with one of these influencers, she was like, "Who should we get to like produce this build challenge or make the videos, or how are we going to do this?"
Right.
And every one of the competitors, whether it was Nate or Holly or Matt from Bleep and Jeep, they'd always say, "Have you talked to Ian yet? You should call Ian." And so they called me up and they said, "We know who you are because you're on television, but tell us what you do outside of that." And I said, "Okay, well, this is what we do." And I basically showed them because at that point in time, we'd already made hands-on cars for Amazon Prime. So we'd all had that in some place. We'd already created 4x4 Garage and Carcraft TV for Motor Trend. We'd already done the Cummins cruise for Cummins, which is very similar to the Onyx Build Challenge.
So Digital Lug had a portfolio.
Yeah, we already had, we had stuff that we could show, right?
Yep.
And she said, "Okay, well, we have this idea for this build challenge." And I said, "Okay." And they had a very good budget for what they want to do. That's the biggest hurdle, because a lot of companies will be like, we want an ultimate adventure," and I'm like, "Great, you need $100,000," and they're like, No, we've got like $15,000," and I'm like, "Well, you're not getting an ultimate adventure." Like that's like there's just thresholds, right?
Right.
And luckily for us, myself, I'll say to people, if you want it right and you want it good, it's going to cost X. There's no going back from that. If you have half that budget, just don't do it. Or
right.
If you want to find someone else to do it, that's fine. It's not going to be as good as it could be, because we know what it costs just to make something like that. So they had a very good budget, and they, most importantly, when we sat down and talked to them about the creative side, they said, "This is our idea." And we said, "Okay, well, give us a week." And then me and my team sat down and we said, this is their mission, this. So how do we get from this to this? And we basically mapped out the entire thing, the trips, the visits, the challenges, the everything that we were going to do. And when we called them back and we just basically said, this is what we're suggesting, they said, okay. We went to Moab to do the first video, shot the first video, handed it off to their team. And then after that, they were just like, "Okay, we're hands off now. We trust you guys. We just make us this challenge." And so we did season 1 of the Build Challenge, which did very, very well for them, incredibly well. Season 2, there were some growing pains there, and I think it was just it's no one's fault. It's just I think we had a sliding scale of what's your KPI? What's your key performance indicator, right? What's going to show that this is a successful thing, right? Because as we talked about before, it's show business. It's two sides of the same coin, and I can make a great show that doesn't help your business, or I can make a great show that does help your business. But if you don't know how to understand, if you don't understand the process of that, it doesn't work. And Ultimate Adventure is a perfect example of that. Ultimate Adventure is very, very good videos, but had a very, very poor track record of keeping their sponsors happy. And
Okay.
that was one of the reasons why that ends up just bleeding out in the end, because you run out of sponsors, you run out of people willing to write a check because they just don't feel that they're being
That they get the ROI on it.
yeah. You have to justify to that company that's writing that check, this is what's going to come from this on the back
Right.
end. And it can't just be, we're going to see your Jeep drive over rocks, because that's not good enough anymore. There's so many players in the game. 20 years ago, when Ultimate Adventure was brand new and all these things were brand new, that was enough, because there were only 3 suspension companies. There was Skyjacker, Superlift, and Rancho.
And they were only advertising in 2 magazines.
Yeah. But now there's 50 suspension
Right.
companies. And then there's companies that sell you parts to make your own suspension, So you have to be able to make sure that company that writes that check, that's sponsoring this event or making a package, that they understand that, hey, this is what I'm going to get out of this. And it can't just be a pretty picture on a rock. It's not enough anymore.
Interesting. Is this, all of this, the whole off-road lifestyle, is it just a profession, or is it a lifestyle? So let me follow that by saying, is there a time recently that you've gone to the woods and gone wheeling that you didn't drag a bunch of cameras with you?
Oh no, mine's a lifestyle, 100%. No, if it's not just the four-wheeling stuff, it's the shop too. Like I
Right.
tell people all the time, I said if the cameras weren't here, I'd still be just building cars.
There you go. Yeah.
So, and then no, I mean, like I go and do Marvin's 24-hour hell and back because it's fun. I don't do it.
It's fun till it's not fun.
Well, it's fun, and it is still fun. I love it. I think it sucks.
Because you seemed a little worn out.
Oh, you're
in that
tired.
last one.
Yeah, no, you get tired fast, but it's still fun. I still go to Easter Cheap every year because it's fun. I go to King of the Hammers. I go work the live stream at King of the Hammers because I want to be at King of the Hammers some way, somehow. So for me, it's it's still fun. If everything, but the reason that I only wanted to do 10 episodes of TV when we transitioned over to Discovery was at the end of Extreme Off-Road, it wasn't as much fun because it was all shop time. And my problem is I love the shop. If I could, my wife and I joked that when we built this building, we almost put a shower in it, and we're glad we didn't, because if we did, I would never leave
You'd
this
never
building.
come home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love working the shop, but I also enjoy going out in the woods. I enjoy four-wheeling. I enjoy spending time out in nature and stuff. So by only doing 10 episodes, I now have the time to do all these fun things that I didn't before. So no, if like my wife and I went to Iceland on a trip, and I rented a Defender and we went four-wheeling. So yeah, no, it's a lifestyle. And it's the thing that people understand is, I think in the automotive industry of all the different genres, right? Because you have them all, right? You have the Brodozer trucks, you've got the race cars, you've got the you got show cars, street rods, all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
Every one of them has a different sort of like form of what their lifestyle is. And I think you have to love off-road to really to survive in this lifestyle, because it's literally a sickness, because you have to be willing to spend hours building something to then go and break it. And
it is a disease,
and
man.
then spend time fixing it. Like, and last time I was out with my wife, I had a winch failure, and I had to like figure out a way to get the Tacoma out of this giant mud hole without a winch. And it was just the two of us. We were just scouting some trails, and I ended up making a stupid decision. And we got out and we got back to the camper, and my wife was like, "So this is fun for you, right?" And I was like, "Well, it sucks in the mix. It sucks." But when you are able to troubleshoot or solve a problem or conquer or not, like and then you get back and you're sitting around the campfire and you're hanging out, then you like, that was tons of fun, even though at the time it sucks. But you have to be committed to this. And like this year at King of the Hammers, I sat down with Vaughn Gittin. I don't know if you know who Vaughn Gittin Jr. is. Vaughn Gittin Jr., drift car racer.
Okay.
He transitioned into Ultra 4. We see a lot of racers come into Ultra 4 that weren't Ultra 4 racers before. They're coming from another form of motorsports. He's the only one that stayed. He's the only one that's like really like committed. He's stopped drifting. He's retired out of drifting. Now he just races Ultra 4. And when I talked to him about it, it's because it's like he loves it. He goes, "I love being out there in the rocks, and my steering rack breaks and I have to fix it by myself in the middle." He goes, "You don't do that stuff at the racetrack. When the race car breaks, you bring it to the pits." The guys fix it. He goes, I love, and so you have to love that part. This is the hardest sport to love, I think. Hardest automotive sport to love. It's way easier to build a hot rod, park it on the grass, sit in your matching lawn chair, drink coffee, talk to your friends, then drive it home on Sunday. Like, that's way easier, you know. So if you like this sport, the people who love it, you're committed 100%.
Nothing requires more innovation than the off-road side.
Yep. Yeah. And like I said, it's just more work.
Yeah.
Yeah. You build the car constantly. The car, like, I know that like hot rod guys and the car's never done. Well, yeah, it's never done because maybe you want to add like a different wheel, or you want to maybe get more horsepower, or we're never done working on the car because the car is like, you're always like, well, I blew up a 1350 front axle. I better find a way to get a 1550 in there, or a set of RCVs. You're always trying to upgrade it to, and then it's just dominoes, right? Because you're upgrading it to hit harder trails, to break it more often, to fix, and that's just how it works. But it's worth it.
Absolutely. All right, Ian. So before I get out of here, I've got 5 rapid fire questions we're going to run through.
Wait, you said, did you want to talk about Motor Trend? The different opinion on Motor Trend?
Oh, we'll go back there.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to back up. That never happened.
Yep.
Ian, you have, I believe, a different opinion on, let's call it the Motor Trend saga that's unfolded over the last. It's been unfolding for a while, but it's just come into public knowledge in the last few months.
Yes. Yeah. I think I share a similar opinion to a few people, which is that, you know, Motor Trend is it's not the evil empire that a lot of people sort of like portray it to be. And I get that. I mean, when you lose your job, it sucks, right? I get it. I've lost jobs in the past. I've been fired. I've worked at dealerships where you walk in and the doors are closed. It absolutely sucks to lose your job. But Motor Trend is not like this evil empire trying to like just make people not enjoy life. Like Motor Trend was the transition from Motor Trend into Discovery, that first initial move, that's what we just finally saw unfold in the past move where Motor Trend Studios was closed. And Motor Trend itself is still alive. It's owned by Discovery Channel. And if there's one thing that's constant, especially in this space of magazines or content or everything, is that things are ever evolving. And yes, did it suck that Motor Trend Studios closed? Absolutely. But as I said before, there's two sides to the coin, show and business. If the business isn't working, the show can't survive. And anyone who in this business, you know that, right? You know that if there's not enough money coming in from advertisers to offset the cost of production, the show doesn't live.
It's very simple. In my day job, I spend a lot of time working with private equity firms. And they make investments into companies like Motor Trend, and they make hard decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks that want to pick it apart. But to your point, there's two sides to it, and people just don't see both sides.
And it was very simple. When the final merger was finished, and you had Discovery Channel finally taking full control over Motor Trend Studios, it was obvious that Motor Trend Studios had more money going out than money coming in. Now, could they have changed that? Possibly. I didn't run Motor Trend Studios. I don't know, but I do know that that's any business. That's your number one goal, right? Money out has to be less than
pretty simple.
Yeah. And so what I tell people all the time, like if you're upset that your favorite show is canceled, or you have a favorite show that you like, or even if you have a favorite content person on YouTube, if you don't want their channel to get canceled or their show get canceled, it's very simple. And that is when you're watching one of these television shows or watching one of these content creators, for example, if Mike Finnegan on Finnegan's Garage is installing some aluminum turbo piping that he got from Vibrant Performance, then the next time you need aluminum turbo piping, if you're a big fan of Mike Finnegan, buy Vibrant Performance turbo piping. Don't buy the cheaper stuff on Amazon that looks like Vibrant Performance. And when you buy it from Vibrant, you say, hey, I'm buying this because I saw it on Mike Finnegan's I saw Mike Finnegan use this. That's why I'm doing it. That's the easiest way to support someone. Like, yeah, buy a t-shirt, but that's not going to pay the bills. I don't care what anyone says. You can sell 1,000 t-shirts a week. You're not making as much money as Vibrant Performance is paying Mike Finnegan to use Vibrant Performance piping. That's just the truth, right? So if you want to support somebody in the automotive space, that's what you do. You when you buy a product that you see on their channel or see them use, you make sure that you tell the company. And that's like when you see these content guys on YouTube and they're like, hey, use the Flex Rocks. Marvin, perfect example. Marvin and I talk business all the time here because him and I have a very, very good open relationship about that. And we had to get a set of drive shafts for the Bronco project. And I said, we'll get some from Tom Woods because Marvin's here. He'll get you the contact. And I said, Marvin, you got a discount code? And he said, no, they don't have a discount code, but if I'll call them to do the introduction.
Yeah.
Because the discount codes are not used to save you money, which they do. The discount codes are so that company can then have a KPI of me sponsoring Marvin sells me X number of parts of whatever, because so many people collect the Flex Rocks and Rollovers discount code that tells me I have this many customers and therefore I made this much money. That's why they use them, and that's how you keep your channels and keep your people alive. That's just the reality. Oh, that one's down.
That one's down.
Okay.
All right.
That one's still going.
Yeah,
Anyway,
we're still
rapid
going.
fire
All right.
questions. Here we go.
Rapid fire. Let's wrap this up. Favorite off-road trail snack?
Oh, jerky, beef jerky. Yeah.
Now, do you just go in the gas station and peruse and grab one, or do you have a go-to?
I like Dukes. They're like small little, not like the big long Slim Jims. They're like super small sausages. And they have a green chili that is really good because I'm a big green chili fan.
Green chili Dukes.
Green
All right.
chili Dukes, yep.
You can only listen to one artist or one album while you're on the trail for the day.
I'm Canadian, so it has to be Tragically Hip.
Okay.
That's
I don't know them. But
that's a
okay.
Canadian band, yeah. If you're a Canadian, you have to say that you just listen to Tragically Hip. It's like a rule.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
DeWalt or Milwaukee?
I am actually an Ingersoll Rand cordless guy, but I
Oh,
do have
door number 3.
Yeah, but I do have welders that run off DeWalt batteries. So
Okay.
yeah. So,
I'll take, as a DeWalt guy, I'll take that
there you go.
as a win.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. This is a tough one. You can only choose one.
Okay.
Horsepower or torque?
Oh man. In the South, horsepower. Out West, I want torque
All right.
because I need
I'll give
horsepower
you
in the
that.
South.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Sketchiest trail you've ever driven?
Oh, that'd be this last 24-hour hell and back. That was the scariest thing we've ever done in my entire life.
So it's as bad as it looked.
Yeah, it was. I told Marvin this. We're in there. I said I've never gone four-wheeling and said like, "What are we doing here? We don't need to be here. This is not smart." Until that trip, there was at 2 a.m.
And how did Marvin respond to that?
He loved it. Yeah, but at 2 a.m. on that trip when we were winching up that 60-foot waterfall, I said to Marvin, I was like, we just need to turn around and go home. This is not. We have no business being in this trail. Yeah, it was the scariest one I've ever done.
All right, Ian, I appreciate it, man. This was fun.
Yes.
If you are listening to this or watching this, and it is about the time this comes out, so before June 12th, let me get my last plug in for the Great Smoky Mountain Trail Ride at Windrock, also known as G-Smitter, 34th year Toyota event, but not just we let anybody register. So if you can handle the heckling, come on with whatever you want to bring. We expect 300 trucks this year. Our local club, local Toyota chapter, stlca.org to register.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.